And as always, I thank you for coming to my talk show, Tell It Like It Is. I'm your host, Morris Man, and my co-host,
Joseph Spencer.
Today we're going to do another special, show. And more or less, Joe Spencer is going to head this one up because that's why Joe is a good candidate, or should I say a good choice for my co-host, because he can bring something to the table that I can't. He can discuss things that were taking place with firsthand account, things that I was not aware of because I wasn't even born at that point. So it's always good to have an older person around to kind of give you a firsthand account of things that have taken place and trying to preserve some things that have been passed down to keep them going. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Joe, and he's going to tell you what the topic is, and we're going to get started. So
We're going to talk about Jim Crow. Jim Crow was an attitude, a man who...
First, give the listening audience, the young people, what is the definition of Jim Crow?
Well, Jim Crow it was a set of rules put together to keep black people down in the United States and separate from the white race.
Okay.
All right, well, when I was a little boy and learned to count, I must have been, 10, 11 years old, I was looking at stuff about Lincoln and slavery. When I finally got a book to look at slavery, they had prints and etchings in these books, these old books that were made in the 20s and 30s, and they depicted black people as being slaves, being whipped, big lips, skin blacker than the shirt. You couldn't tell if they were human or half human or animal. And they had a little caption of Jim Crow in it. And I went to my mother and asked her what Jim Crow was. And she looked at me and says, "Boy, you don't know what Jim Crow is. You don't know nothing." So I went to my uncle and my father and said, "What is Jim Crow?" And they looked and said, "Boy, you don't know what Jim Crow is. You don't know nothing," and walked away from me. So I learned to read a little better, got a little older, and I began to realize that I was born in 1948, and slavery was over in 1862. That was 85 years before I was born. And being young and not really having anybody tell me anything about slavery, except for the teachers telling me that this white man freed all the black people. All right. Jim Crow was an attitude, a formula made by the Southern whites to put in the household, the black households, churches, and schools to keep black people in their place. The older I get, I begin to realize in my household, in my schools, in my churches, Jim Crow was still up in there. Even though slavery wasn't 1,000 years old, like I thought it was when I was a kid, was only not even 100 years when I began to realize this stuff. And it came in with spare the rod, spoil the child, the beatings, telling black males they weren't worth anything. Jim Crow.
Let me ask you a quick question, Joe. Would you say Jim Crow is still alive, or was it dead and buried?
I'll be 65 in July. When you have a system set up in a family, it becomes tradition. These traditions are handed down from generation to generation. Jim Crow has been forgotten about, but it's still here because there's a lot of black parents who don't know, bring their children up in the Jim Crow era. There are black people who use the Jim Crow method of oppressing black people and keep them down. Your lips are too big. Your skin is too dark. Your hair is too nappy.
It's funny, if I can interject right quick. The movie Spike Lee that he did was called School Days.
School Days.
A lot of people missed the point of that movie. It went right over their head. And the point was, we bicker within ourselves.
Right.
I mean, it's been historical that we have clashes, unfortunately, with people that are of different colors. But we have clashes with people that are our own color. Mm-hmm. Light-skinned people think that they're better than dark-skinned people.
That's a part of Jim Crow.
Yeah, and it's interesting and sad in that movie that's what that movie was totally about. A lot of people missed it. They missed that point.
What he's talking about is that house nigger stuff. You had your field niggas, you had your poach niggas, and you had your house niggas. Most of the yellow people born by Mr. Charlie were half white, so they were the house niggas. And then if you black, you'll know our society like long hair and fair-skinned black women. I don't. I like women color in this shirt. Everybody thinks I was crazy when I was a kid. I would go, especially if she had a little white dress on. I'd go nuts. And our women today still put fake hair on their head so they can do this. So white girls, you've never seen a black woman in Africa tossing her hair. They breaking their necks doing that. Jim Crow is alive. It's alive. It was in my school. When you teach a child about slavery, you should watch what you say. It affects a lot of kids. It affects their personality. It affects their intellect, their creativity. I've actually had teachers tell me to go sit my black ass down. I was brought up under the rule of thumb of this is the only way to get a nigga to do what he's supposed to do is to whip him. A lot of kids don't respond to being beaten to be taught a lesson. That's a part of Jim Crow. Jim Crow in church. You're gonna die, you're gonna go to hell, you're never gonna be anything. That's part of Jim Crow. Jim Crow also gathered the preachers in back in the day to keep the niggas in line. For years, I couldn't understand why some of the preachers had the attitude they were until I began to learn and study more about Jim Crow.
And what's interesting, if I can just interject right quick, I guess you can call it subliminal, meaning that there are things that are sent to our psyche that on the surface we don't notice, but we pick up on it, and here is one of them. If you think about it, everything that's usually associated with black is negative. Blackball, blacklisted, blackmail, and just the opposite, white, everything is pure, everything is fine. And kids pick up on that, and they walk around of our young folks, people of color, feeling a sense of inferiority. Because again, we touched on, and I'll give it back to you in a second, we touched on that nonsense about just about every black person in the country has a great-great-great-granddaddy who's 100% Cherokee Indian, and we dismiss that nonsense because it's not true. There was no point in history that white Indians were hooking up with black people making babies, but we've been conditioned to think that black people are not good enough by themselves. We got to be mixed in with something else. That's why our hair is kind of wavy and smooth, because we got other races in us, which is not true. And I turn it back over to Joe.
Everything you're saying is right on. We've been oppressed by Jim Crow, from our lips to our big African feet. To our auntie mammies. Jim Crow even had white women have black women nurse their kids on a black woman's breast because black women were considered like getting milk from a cow. It's strange. It's just weird. This is how stupid these people were.
And you've seen a lot of that in the 40s in the movies.
Yeah.
All of the black women in the 40s were these heavy-set women with rags on their heads, taking care of these white kids like they were their own.
Yeah. And looking, hey man, and when the little black kids was represented, they would just pass through on these movies. The black mammy was more of a mother to these little white kids than they were
than their mother,
than their own children.
Yeah. Talk about or discuss a little bit, because I'm sure you're more familiar with it than I. What's up with blackface? What was that about in the Al Jolson days and the vaudeville days, these white guys that have this shellacking black paint on their face and dancing around? What was that about?
That was about, in Mexico, they got this little comic book. And, a lot of slaves went through Mexico. When you take a set of people and make an entertainment out of it and mimic them in a negative way, it makes niggas less frightening. Well, he got big lips and he danced, he entertained. Some entertaining you is less frightening. All people actually did was sit in the front yard and entertain these people. That's where the blackface came from. It came from an era during the riverboat days where black people weren't really engaged to mix with the crowds even in entertainment. Later on, they started having it on stage. So, if they want to do a skit about the old Mississippi, you needed niggas. So white people would put on this black mask and grease on their face and dress like little black field hands. Hey, and give that representation of Mr. Charlie on the porch and the niggas down there. Yeah, sir.
And that was quite popular back in that era.
Yeah.
Al Jolson made a lot of money
Yeah.
parading around with that shellac and black stuff on his face.
And it became, around the 1880s and 1890s, it became part of theater. You know, they had even black people, when they went on stage, they went into blackface. It was an accepted thing in theater. It wasn't really insulting anymore. It was an accepted thing in theater. If you were a mummer, maybe you'd be black or white, you wore blackface. You know, it seems like to me from that era, everybody wanted to mimic the old South on stage, maybe it being the North, East, or West. When I was a kid, I never did understand it. I still don't see what's so great about the South. I really don't. And just watch what you're saying to your kids. Remember that your parents, even if you were born in 1970 or 1980s, your parents had put certain keynotes in your spirit, in your soul, in your mind, to oppress your children, especially your male children. When you oppress the males in your society, children do not have guidance if they don't respect the male population in that society.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I got an email from a friend in Chicago, and he basically told me about an unfortunate incident that happened on the south side of Chicago, I think about 2 days ago. 72-year-old man was on his way to dialysis at 3:30 in the morning. There was a shuttle bus for senior citizens to take him. As he walked out his door through the little gangway, before he even could get to the sidewalk to the van, these two young guys, well, actually they don't know how many it was, but I'm assuming it's two, because Cal was running groups. Remember that. And they killed this man before he got to the van and stole, which was nothing of worth, a bag of clothes and maybe his wallet that didn't have anything, no more than maybe $5. And that's as a result of what we talked about. The whole foundation of this talk show is about the foundation of the breakdown of the black family structure, and it's causing a domino effect. That's why the majority of these kids that are out there committing these crimes came from, in most cases and not all, a situation of they mama at home with grandmama and she's only 17 years older than themselves. And how can you raise a law-abiding, respectable black man in that condition when there's no strong black man to teach these young black men to be men? You know, and until we fix that problem and repair it and stop having these adolescent children literally having sex in their parents' house and making babies and not getting married to the people they're having sex with, you're going to see a whole lot of this more to come in the future.
Well, believe it or not, they have a lot to do with Jim Crow too, because
exactly.
People were breeded like puppies, which I think they did us a favor, because there's the odds that you could breed a young black male with a young black woman and come up with a superior product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, Hitler tried it. It works. You know, I know a lot about animal husbandry. If you breed the right stallion with the right mare, you're gonna get a better horse. You know, that's why a lot of brothers can jump real high. You know, and think quicker than everybody else. They did do us one favor. You know, they did selective breeding.
Yeah, I mean, people do it for animals. You know, as far as getting a better pedigree and things of that nature. But you know, all this again that we talk about on this show, and we tell it like it is. You know, literally. It's again centered around the fact that the black family structure is falling apart, and as a result of that, you see the crime rise, and you see teenagers literally going out there killing teenagers and older, helpless people. When I was a kid, probably the guys in their 20s and 30s were doing that kind of stuff. They were older, they needed money for rent or whatever. They weren't still teenagers living in their mom's house going out and killing people.
With tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Killing people with tennis shoes and some little jacket, a hoodie. You know, when you have a 16, 17-year-old feel that he's right to go prey on somebody that's weaker than them. My thing is, if I'm going to steal from somebody, I'm going to dope dealers and pimps to do it. You know, because they got the money.
Yeah, it's kind of the Robin Hood mindset. You know, you're taking from the bad guys and
Right.
you're giving it to. I mean,
But it's still against the law. Cop
yeah,
told me
and
that.
I don't condone that neither.
I don't condone it neither.
Right, but unfortunately, you know, until we deal with the root issue, and the root issue is just the breakdown of the black family structure, we're gonna get more of this. Because this is just kind of a preview of one of our next discussions about Section 8. People think that slavery has been abolished. Slavery is still alive and well. You know what it's called now? Tell them, Joe.
Section 8.
There you go.
And I wish I can get it, but hey.
When anybody control your money, they control you.
Control your money,
you know?
control your stomach.
And
Man.
you ask yourself, well, why are they being so considerate to people? And this is not a statement to say everybody in that situation is this way, but there are quite a few people that are on that system. They're not trying to be productive. It's not in their best interest to be productive. If they go out and get a job, it's not as much as they're getting to sit on their ass.
Like any pet, if you feed them, give them shelter,
They
give them a
content.
place to have sex, that they're gonna be content.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have nobody else to teach them. Oh well, you got some place to have sex. You eat 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. You don't get wet. You doing good.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, we're not going to go into that in detail because we're saving that for another blockbuster show. We're going to get a lot of people's ears and attention on that particular show because we tell it like it is here. We don't have to worry about censorship. We don't have to worry about sponsorship being taken away, being yanked off the air. So, therefore, we can just give you the 100% real situation and instead of sugarcoat it because we're getting a paycheck by lobbyists to keep us quiet and not to go in this area and discuss these things. It's not like that here. And a lot of our young folks need that information. And that's why we decided to do this and give birth to the show because our young folks are suffering. And it's up to us, the older folks who know the deal, who've been around 50, 60 years, can tell these 20-year-old guys what to expect because when you're 20, you don't know what's going to happen to you when you're 40, you know? When you're 17, you don't know what's going to happen to you when you're 20. So we have to continue to instill in our young folks these guidance and these, these things that they're going to have to deal with. Because there's some things that I don't care who you are, what you do, you're going to have to deal with it. And it's better to be equipped to knowing that you're going to have to deal with it, prepared for it mentally, financially, however, spiritually, than to not know and you walk out there blinded and get hit by a car. Because you don't see the car coming, you don't even know you're in the street. So again, that's the purpose of this show is to educate everybody. And it's not just about black people or white people, it's about everybody. It's about educating our young folks on the whole to stop them from this nonsense of going out there killing innocent people who they don't even have a beef with. I mean, it's different if you had a beef with somebody, had a bad temper. These people are killing innocent people that they've never met in their entire lives, and it's unfortunate that these
other person make a target out of them.
Yeah, these young folks leave early in life, and these other young folks go to jail for the rest of their life. It's stupid, and it's up to us to say, hey, it's time to wake these young folks up and get them back on track.
And like you said, it's not just a black thing, because I had a white guy, a friend of mine back in the day, explain to me what white trash was. He look at this white trash they let in this West restaurant. We're gonna have to start coming in here.
Yeah, and FYI, that term "white trash" was coined by white folks, not black folks.
Oh, you said that 80 years ago, they would lynch you, white trash. Would have lynched your butt. They would have did it in the 50s. They would have lynched you.
Yeah. But any closing remarks? Because we've had a pretty good show, and we thank Joe for his insight on Jim Crow. And I see my production assistants letting us know that we're coming to the end of the road.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate
Likewise,
this forum.
Joe. Likewise.
That's the only thing I got to say.
Okay, well, on that note, I hope that this particular show was informative. And until next time, keep thinking. I'm your host again, Morris Man, and my co-host is
Joseph Spencer.
Till next time, keep thinking. Take care.
Bye.